This is exclusive updates, and so here's the real reason why Steve Will Do It and NELK fell out, because Steve was a star on the NELK show, but it all started with Kyle discovering Steve. So Steve's gonna explain how he ended up on NELK, and so he went from basically nothing to being this millionaire, giving away money, and people really thought he was a star of the show. And that was until you stopped seeing him deal with the NELK boys after a while. And in my opinion, NELK has fallen off dramatically since they started. That's why it's good that they're doing podcasts and stuff like that now. And in this interview that I'm going to play, Steve is talking with Bradley Martin, who was also a strong affiliate of NELK. And it doesn't sound like none of them really hang out as much as they used to. But let's see what Steve has to say about how he got discovered by slamming down drinks and being online, living with his mom, and then Kyle saw him online and ended up signing him on to the NELK.
So how did the NELK boys find you? I guess
So when I was posting the Instagram videos, Kyle actually caught one of my first liquor videos, and he posted me on his story saying this guy's not human, and this was before I had 1,000 followers on Instagram. And we just kept in touch. He would send me merch to wear, and I make a video, and he'd pay me $500. And then he came to visit me one time in Florida, and it was a good first interaction. And then I was on probation for weed at the time, so as soon as I got off probation, he flew me to Los Angeles to film NELK videos, and it was just a success. And I've been with Kyle ever since.
Now, obviously, YouTube's like a business, right? And I feel like a lot of people don't see that. Signing to the NELK group, how was those contracts like? Was it scary for you signing? I guess, was there a contract?
Fuck, I don't even know. Yeah, there was some type of contract, but it wasn't like that. Joining NELK, just by itself, contracts aside, was just insane. Officially being a NELK boy, was pretty insane to me.
So Steve admits that he basically went from a nobody, just an average person, to having a lot of clout and money out of nowhere. His life changed dramatically thanks to Kyle signing him from those online antics. And so Steve started a NFT project with NELK. It sounds like this is where things started to go a little left, is when the money got involved, and there was more things they were working on, where Steve is saying he doesn't feel like he got his fair cut out of that NFT deal. It was called MetaCard. There was big plans for it, and Steve said he promoted it and was involved in it, and it doesn't sound like he got his fair share.
Where did that anger come from, though?
Just me being involved in MetaCard and me promoting it and tying my name to it and saying a bunch of that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And that's just it. It was just this is just, and then it's just a bunch of things. I don't know. Just
what happened with all what it is? I think they made $25 million. What happened with all the money?
Well, the whole idea, I thought, was open up gyms and this, that, and the fourth. So I don't know. So that bothers me, because I would never say that to my people and not try my hardest, and then say if it doesn't work out, it'd be dude, let's do something cool, instead of having me have to hang out with people, you know what I'm saying? Hang out with oh, we're going to a fight and bringing people to hang out with, or this, that. It's I don't know. So yeah, a little anger there. It's just whatever. Just growing full send and NELK and everything, and just having no ownership or involvement.
But didn't you have ownership at one point?
Yeah, dude. And they said you have 15% for free.
And so Steve Will Do It is saying that he helped grow NELK. So I'll give him that, because NELK did become more popular when Steve got involved, and it looks like he basically was getting paid according to his contract. So when Steve first signed on to NELK, I don't think anyone realized how much he was going to be a big part of that show like that. I mean, they probably signed him thinking he would be like the other members that they signed, just kind of like a side character. But Steve ended up really becoming the main character of the show. And I really think this is where some of the issues came as well. I don't think they were really talking about that, but just from watching the whole rise and fall of NELK, I kind of think that there might have been a little bit of that involved where Steve just started really thinking that he is worth more than the show was giving him. So that's understandable because, yeah, that contract probably wasn't the best contract for him because he had just gotten involved with NELK. He became a NELK boy, and he wasn't expected to become as famous as he ended up becoming. So I think that's where the issues came in. Maybe they could have renegotiated their contract, but it doesn't sound like they got around to that because they started falling out with each other before they had a chance to even figure out how to solve their issues.
And
Free's funny because Free's...
And then you get extra 5%.
Free's also
No. You have 10% for free for what you've done. Okay.
So not free. Free is what you.
But if you invest, $500,000 right now, like we need it by tomorrow, you'll get a free 15% plus an additional 5%, which is 20%. So yeah, did that, sent the money, got nothing out of it. Years later, nothing. Had to threaten them to act. People like to say I'm just, oh, Steve's crazy. No, Steve is fed up.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it, bro. I've been around firsthand, so I've seen it. I've had conversations with you, obviously off camera, about stuff.
And I'll say this, bro. Kyle Forgeart found me when I was nothing, brought me out. I killed it, everything, but he discovered me, found me. Whatever. There's no disrespect towards him. I love him. I think there's just certain people in suit and ties that get involved that don't give a about anybody but themselves and their family. Like me, I care about the fans.
Yeah.
Some stupid guy in a suit and tie does not care about our fans. So I think that was just the number one mistake in everything. Always like, oh, you make so much money, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But no, all my money that was made from that side of things was 75% of SteveWillDoIt merch.
Yeah.
Okay. When we sold $12 million in Full Send merch, my check was $400,000. Okay.
Yeah.
My small percent.
Part of that was Bradley Martin sold me drugs t-shirts that I made no money from.
So when I actually made 1.1 million or whatever total,
yeah,
the most I made or whatever is million, most of that money, you got to think, was selling Steve merch, 75% of Steve, okay? Because it's like we sell $12 million of merch, and we only did it one time. We did no repeat. After that, it was 8, and then it just kept going lower. But if you only make $400,000 off $12 million of merch sales, I'm not the one that's take. It's just SteveWillDoIt merch does very well.
Yeah.
So there's this always thing like, oh, you got paid so much money. Well, SteveWillDoIt merch did pretty well.
And so that's interesting. He brought up the Steve merch because, yeah, it looks like I said, Steve was basically the main character of the show after a while. And it was just bad business for them. Like I said, I think there was more going on behind the scenes. I think it just really started looking like Steve was just becoming too big for the show. He needed his own platform, and that's what he did. He ended up making his own show and just kind of separating himself from NELK. And he doesn't think he was getting the right amount of money that he should have been getting from the merch and stuff like that. But this is where Kyle is now going to respond. So Kyle's going to come in and defend his contract with Steve. Check out what Kyle has to say.
So there's been a lot said about me online recently and about how things work with Steve and NELK. So I'm going to be talking about that right now. No personal shots, just the facts. In 2019, Steve signed a deal with NELK that clearly outlined how he would get paid for merch, brand deals, appearances, everything. So on Steve's personal merch, he received 70% of the net profits. NELK's 30% was not pure profit. It covered the design, the production, the fulfillment, inventory, everything that it takes to make a successful merch drop. A 70% creator split while the company manages full operations is a very strong deal. So now let's talk about how much money Steve earned from NELK. So I'm gonna pop up something here. It's a year-by-year breakdown of personal cash earnings for me and Steve. So you can see here from 2019 to 2023 how much I made and how much Steve made each year. Over that stretch, personally, I earned just under $3.5 million. Over that same stretch, Steve earned just over $12 million in cash. And these payments were just from NELK. Steve also did outside third-party brand deals independently from NELK. In our deal, there was a standard 15% management fee for NELK on these outside deals, but I chose not to enforce that percentage on several major deals.
And so Steve was getting like 70%. It looks like NELK was getting 30%. That's a pretty solid deal. I don't see where the problem is with that. I mean, how much does he think he should have gotten? Like 80%, 90%? I mean, he's in a partnership with NELK, the people that put him on, and he thinks 70-30 split is not fair. I don't really understand that. I mean, Kyle's showing receipts and everything. So Kyle's defending his stance with the business he was doing with Steve. And I think I almost kind of believe Kyle because, I mean, the thing is, I just think it comes down to Steve probably just became too big for the show, where he probably just needed a serious raise after they realized how much value he was bringing to the show. I mean, they already signed a contract. That's the thing. They already signed a contract. So I would think you would almost have to honor the full contract before you start renegotiating. I don't know if you can renegotiate in the middle of a contract, but, you know, at this point, it was too late. I mean, they're already falling out over money, and I don't even understand how Steve got all that money. I'm guessing it's probably crypto or something, because he just ended up just looking like he was loaded and just giving away money to everybody. And so, but the thing is, Kyle's defending, you know, his contract with Steve and saying it was a fair deal, and this is what he signed up for. So, I mean, business is business, you know, and you got to stand on business. If you sign a contract, you should honor that contract. You know, that's what the contract's all about. I say probably renegotiate it after the contract is fulfilled, you know. And but the thing is, Steve brought up other issues earlier, like with that NFT, but Kyle's going to continue explaining his deal with Steve.
On those deals, Steve kept the full 100% amount. So the reason I earned less than Steve during that time is pretty simple. The money had to stay in NELK so we could keep shooting videos. Shooting these videos was not cheap. You have the production, the filmers, the editors, the travel. All that required real capital. When we were traveling through Europe with 15 people so we could shoot, edit, and upload a video every single week, the Airbnbs, the production, the travel, that stuff was not cheap. If the money didn't stay in the company, then these videos would not get made. So as the owner, it was my job and my priority to keep the money in the company and pay the people that made the content possible over taking more money personally. So let's talk about Steve's equity in NELK. First of all, equity means ownership. It's not monthly pay. Equity becomes valuable as the company grows and eventually sells, goes public, or becomes extremely profitable. It's pretty much a long-term bet on the future of the company. I explained clearly what the equity meant to Steve, and I gave him 10% of the company, and he also chose to invest $500,000 for an additional 5%. At that time, nobody, including me, was taking extra owner payouts. The structure of the company didn't change because Steve became an owner. The money had to stay in the business if we wanted to pay the people that made the content possible so we could keep making videos. I explained to Steve that equity is long-term and it could pay off over time, and it's not immediate cash flow. Over time, Steve made it clear that he preferred immediate cash over holding ownership for a potential long-term outcome. So we returned his $500,000 plus $50,000 in interest. Like I said earlier, there was a 15% management fee on Steve's outside deals to NELK, and as Steve's business grew, he wanted full independence and no longer wanted to do any type of revenue sharing with NELK. At his request, we agreed to that structure, and he no longer held equity in NELK. That meant that NELK would no longer be able to collect 15% on his outside deals, and he would no longer have equity in NELK. The separation agreement formalized that, we both signed it, and today there are no revenue sharing between NELK and Steve. Also, for clarity, Steve was granted 15% of Happy Dad when we started the company, and he remains one of the largest shareholders today.
And so you see, I mean, looks like it's all about equity when it comes down to it. Kyle is saying Steve signed on and he had a sweet deal, Kyle is saying. And, you know, when he bought into the contract, he had equity, and he tried to explain to Steve what equity meant. Look, the equity is you purchase your share, and, you know, it's not an instant check. Your money's going to grow with the company. The value of your equity share is going to become more valuable if you believe in the company and you stay in for the long term and hold. Let the company do its thing, and then, you know, you can pull out if you want, maybe after the company becomes much more valuable than it is at the time of signing on to it. And Steve sounded like he just wanted his money back. So this is where obviously the fallout got real serious. When somebody's asking for their money back to something they signed on for, it's like, I would have at that point been like, I don't necessarily have to give you your money back. You signed on to this, you know. But I guess the way it sounds is, you know, he probably sold him his share back. So that makes more sense. Just the way he demanded his money back, it just sounds like that's where the fallout began, though. Because, I mean, it's one thing to say that you want your money back, but if you're saying you want to sell your share back, okay, that's more official. That sounds a lot more reasonable. So anyway, looks like Kyle gave him his money back, and that also meant that Steve no longer held any equity in the company. And then as the company grew, it looked like Steve got even more mad because he didn't get it. Like, okay, you got your money back and you no longer hold equity. So at that point, you know, you're out of luck. I mean, you shouldn't have sold your shares back then if you're going to complain now that the company's worth more. It's not like Kyle got over on you. It's just that you didn't want to hold your share. So that's just what it comes down to. Looks like SteveWillDoIt still owns a share of Happy Dad and everything. So, you know, that's what it is. It's the end of NELK anyways. I mean, their shows don't even look right anymore. They used to be pretty popular some years ago, but, you know, I don't think anyone's super excited to see a NELK video as much as they used to. I mean, they just don't have it anymore, especially after Steve left. I think it was like just the dynamic of the group doesn't really seem to excite a lot of people anymore. I mean, they might have their crowd and everything. I think they're better off like what they're doing, moving to podcasts and doing other things at this point, because I don't think they can recapture the same energy and level of excitement that they used to have. It's pretty much a thing of the past, if you ask me. But, you know, it is what it is. But this was a insight on what's really going on behind the scenes with SteveWillDoIt and NELK. And it just looks like it was, you know, people became famous and they started getting money, and it just started to separate them. So yeah, that's about it for today. Let's get 100 likes on this video. Check out the description box for links and stuff like that. Make sure you subscribe. This has been Exclusive Updates signing off. Check out the Path to Success. Link is in the comment section and description box if you want to learn ways to be successful at anything you might be working on.